I like furniture that starts beautiful and stays beautiful, but sadly, that isn't always the case. A lot of people help me understand the process of polishing in the most simplest ways. A bit of trial and error, and I had this process. I have been using this for years and it works like a charm. I hope it works for you too. In addition to the products playing on the screen, you will also need a paintbrush and paint thinner. The thinner will help you thin the paint when required, but it will also help you clean the brush when you're done. A note of caution though, never leave the brush soaking in the thinner as it will weaken the bristles. There are multiple ways to deal with corrosion. I am using a 150 grit sandpaper in the video, but depending on the area and the intensity of rust, you can use a sandpaper anywhere between grit 60 to 150. For those who have a hand grinder, a 60 grit flap disc would work best. If your furniture is made of wrought iron or is grilled, it is probably best to use a steel wired hand brush. To strip the polish and smoothing out the wood, you can simply start by using a sandpaper. A manual or an electric hand sander is preferable, especially if you're working on a larger area. Be it machine or manual, you can start with a 80 grit or a 100 grit sandpaper, make your way to 150, then eventually 320 or 400 just to smoothen out the rough patches. Once you have a nice clean surface to work on, go right ahead and start painting it with undiluted yellow primer. This will take around 24 to 48 hours to dry. Once it is smooth to touch, you can start painting it with any color of your choosing. If you are using a color from your stock, make sure it is still good. After a day of drying, my semi-matte paint turned to powder on touch. Luckily, my yellow primer was still good. Once I scraped off all the paint from wherever it came loose, I went back to painting it the second time. But this time, I chose a gloss black enamel paint. Enamel paint on metal takes time to dry out completely, especially in the monsoon season. But once it's dry, I have found that it is one of the sturdiest paints for metal. It is advisable to use a paint roller if you are using high gloss shades. Errors are always more visible on glossy than on matte or semi-matte. 2 coats of paint and 6 days of curing time later, we are ready to polish. When it comes to polishing, the first thing I like to start with is the wood filler. Wood filler by itself looks patchy. To reduce that effect, we add brown powder which closely matches the wood stain and mix it all with a bit of water. Repeat until you're satisfied with the shade. Once you're satisfied with the color, go ahead and fill the defects with a putty blade. A fine layer of the filler will dry in about 5 to 7 minutes. Sand the excess lightly with a 120 or a 150 grit sandpaper. On a small piece of rag, pour some wood stain and apply it onto the wood. Applying the stain along the grain of the wood will give you the best results. Make sure that the stain does not directly drip onto the wood as it may create unpleasant patches. There are different ways of staining. I like this method the best because it brings out the natural beauty of any wooden surfaces. After about 2 coats of the stain, let the surface rest for 3 to 5 minutes. Meanwhile, mix brown powder and stain in a palette. Paint over any patches left over from the wood filler. Seal the polish with water-based PU. On a fresh piece of rag, take a small dollop of the solution and apply a fine layer. Once dried in about 3 to 5 minutes, sand it with a wet 1000 grit sandpaper. Apply the second coat and let it dry. Aquadur PU comes in two varieties, matte and glossy. I have used the matte finish because I wanted the most natural look. Once the PU dries, the surface will repel water. And that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. It always means a lot when you do. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video.